Hello and welcome to Absolute Trust Talk. I am Kirsten Howe. I am the owner manager of Absolute Trust Council, and this is our podcast, and we're so glad to have you back. This is the third in a series of chats that I'm having with my guest today, Jirayr Kembikian. He is a CFP, a wealth advisor. In case you missed my introduction of him in the other two episodes, he is a co-founder of Citrine Capital, which is a San Francisco-based wealth management and tax planning firm. They largely serve tech professionals, founders, and business owners. And over the years, he has developed a little bit of an expertise in the area of Bitcoin as an investment. And that's what he's here to talk to us a little bit more about. If you missed the first two episodes, you ought to go back. They're fascinating. But today, and welcome, Jirayr. Thank you for being back. I appreciate it. Today, we're going to kind of talk about how we use Bitcoin. What are we doing with it once we've purchased it? And my understanding, which was zero before I met Jirayr, but now is that there are sort of two uses for crypto, but we've been focusing on Bitcoin. One is as a storage of value, and the other is as a currency. So let's talk about what actually is a currency and how does Bitcoin stack up against what we are most familiar with, which is dollars and cents.
Sure. So happy to dive in here. There's lots of different directions we can go on what a currency should be, an ideal currency should be. So I'll break it down into what many research reports have dove into. Number one, maybe the most important from a currency or store of value perspective is it has to be durable in the sense that it has to maintain your purchasing power over time. And I'll contrast this conversation with gold, our fiat currency, and Bitcoin. So with gold, it's been around for thousands of years. It has maintained purchasing power based on who has owned it. Bitcoin also would fall in that bucket of maintaining your purchasing power over time. In comparison, the dollar or virtually any other currency has lost and has not been able to maintain purchasing power over time. So that's number one. Number two, as we touched on in the previous segment, it has to be divisible. So can you divide up a dollar or Bitcoin? Yes, you can. With a dollar, there are cents. With a Bitcoin, there are one Bitcoin equals 100 million Satoshis. With gold, you can't. It's not divisible, right? You can't walk around and shave off gold to pay for items.
Right. You either got a chunk of gold or you don't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The next piece is going to be that it has to be portable, meaning it has to be easy to transport. And again, this goes against gold because while it has maintained purchasing power over time, it's incredibly heavy and expensive and difficult to transport. You can't send tons of gold across the country or world cheaply and safely.
Right.
So again, from a portability perspective, Bitcoin is superior, and the dollar and other
The
currencies
dollar is also, yeah.
are also easy. Not as easy as Bitcoin, but easy. Another big part is how verifiable is the currency. So with Bitcoin, the supply of Bitcoin and the Bitcoin network is verified every 10 minutes. And that's a huge part of Bitcoin. Anyone in the world can access the Bitcoin network, can verify transactions, can verify the total amount of Bitcoin in the world, versus no one can do that with the US dollar system. No one can walk into Fort Knox and say, hey, let me verify the contents of this location. And with gold, it's also very difficult to verify how much gold there is in the overall world.
Mm-hmm.
It's also difficult and maybe expensive with gold to verify that it actually is gold.
Is gold, right?
Something else. So
Right.
that's a big part of it. The next part is scarcity. Ideally, money, hard money, should be scarce. It shouldn't be easily printed as the currency
Hmm.
is currently. With Bitcoin, as we mentioned, it has a fixed supply cap, so that is superior. Gold also gets a positive in this ranking, but
Right.
with an asterisk, because if the price of gold skyrockets, or rather, I should say, as the price of gold skyrockets based on what's
Which is
happening this
happening
year,
right now. Yeah.
which is happening this year, there will simply be more incentive and more ways to mine more gold, right? We
Hmm.
might look for uh, gold in a more profitable way than that it wasn't profitable previously, simply based
Hmm.
on the price of gold. That doesn't exist with Bitcoin, right? No matter what the price of Bitcoin does, that will not influence how much
Right.
supply we will have.
There's nothing anybody can do to make a greater supply of Bitcoin. Yeah.
And the last piece is track record. So, how long has this piece of money stood the test of time? And gold is actually the only one that has withstood the test of time because it's been around for thousands of years. Bitcoin has only been around for 15-ish years.
Hmm.
So, not great from that perspective that the track record isn't there. And that also deters some people in
Yeah.
holding and acquiring Bitcoin because it's only been around for that long.
Right.
And that's a negative.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So let's talk then about how we go about using Bitcoin as a currency. Our My understanding is that there are other countries besides the US where it's much more widely used as a currency than it is here in the US.
It's so this is a interesting fork in the conversation, if you will, because some countries have used it out of necessity. And I think that's an important point to acknowledge because in the West, Europe, US, in the West, we are very privileged from a currency
Mhm.
perspective. In comparison to virtually all other global currencies, we have a very stable currency.
Mhm.
There
Mhm.
isn't substantial risk in having your money seized from you without any proper cause. And that, unfortunately, is not the case in most of the world. So, no surprise, most of the world has uh,
Em
migrated towards Bitcoin
Embraced
purely
Bitcoin.
out of necessity. And that
Mhm.
largely is the reason why Bitcoin has exploded in adoption in the global south, in South America, Africa, and so on. And that's an interesting thought process where you're comparing it as a store of value, which is largely how it was started to be thought of in the West, right? And that has been, in my opinion, solidified or starting to be solidified as institutions flood into Bitcoin from a store of value
Right.
perspective and whatnot. And that also logically makes sense because most folks are not going to accept money until it is actually having the properties of money, right? We want it to be able to store value properly over time. And
Mhm.
that's also an important acknowledgement that some people, even 5 or 10 years ago, said, hey, this is a failure. Bitcoin is a failure because people are not transacting on Bitcoin. Well, it will over time. It
Mhm.
first
Mhm.
has to solidify as a store of value, and then
Okay.
will,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
will become a medium of exchange.
Right. I get that. Okay. So, but it is still happening in the world and in the US that people are using Bitcoin as currency.
Yes. So very interesting time that we are in right now. I want to say it was a couple months ago and starting to roll out where uh, Block, formerly known as Square, integrated Bitcoin into their point of sale terminal. So this is, I don't know the exact number of POS terminals in the world or in the country for Block, but this is fascinating.
It's got to be millions. Yeah.
This is millions and millions of
Yeah.
point of sale terminals. So that's number one. As you kind of touched on previously, El Salvador was the pilot country, if you will, for accepting Bitcoin as legal tender, and that's been a fascinating ecosystem to see just how it developed over time, and we're starting to see more and more retailers, both in the U.S. and internationally, either piloting Bitcoin acceptance programs for payment or implementing these programs. And in most cases, what they're finding is it's faster and less expensive than
Hmm.
traditional point of sale terminals and processes. So
Okay.
it's fascinating how quickly this is starting to happen, and it's a positive in the Bitcoin space.
So that credit card processing fee that I pay, if I were to accept Bitcoin, maybe the fee would be a little less?
A lot less,
A lot less.
a lot less, and
Okay, I'm gonna
much
think about
faster.
that.
Yeah, it's also faster in terms of how it settles. So not only are you paying a higher percentage for credit card fees, but you're also paying,
I
I'm
have to
sorry,
wait. Yeah,
but you're waiting
yeah,
X number of business days to have
yeah,
that money deposited in your account. So that's
exactly.
another really interesting point about Bitcoin is its immediate settlement.
Right, right. Interesting. Okay, have you ever used Bitcoin yourself, for a purchase or for some kind of contractual arrangement?
Absolutely.
Okay.
There's all kinds of situations now. I think as Bitcoin continues its adoption curve, there will be more and more ways to pay with Bitcoin. But yes, that is something that I've used, and it's a fascinating technology. There are different ways to use it from a store of value perspective, as we touched on in previous episodes, versus if you're spending it on the Lightning Network, which the name kind of suggests what it is, very
Mhm.
fast and inexpensive. There's a different way to hold that and transact on Bitcoin.
Okay. Interesting. Um, Before we go, I do wanna touch on, environmental and social aspects of all of this because I know that's a very important piece of it for you personally. I just wanna give you a chance to, talk to us a little bit about that.
So this was what kept me in Bitcoin is my passion for what is in the investment universe known as ESG, environmental social governance factors. And historically, which I think was accurately so, historically, Bitcoin was viewed as a negative, a big negative from the environmental perspective,
Environmental. Mhm.
right? Mostly because of the energy consumption,
Right.
and maybe a smaller point due to emissions. So that
Oh,
was one of the initial deep dives that we did, saying, hey, we are very sustainably focused at Citrine Capital, and we
mhm.
want an asset class that brings all the unique characteristics of Bitcoin that it does, but we don't want to have it as a negative in our portfolios.
We don't wanna burn down the environment in the process.
Sure.
Yeah.
And over time, and what we started to uncover over that period is Bitcoin is actually a huge positive for the
Mm.
environment from numerous perspectives. So, number one, um, there are Bitcoin mining operations that are being set up around the world that can consume methane, which is one of the most harmful gases to our environment.
Right,
This might be from a landfill. This
right.
might be from a gas flaring operation. And Bitcoin miners are setting up essentially on site to not
To
only
capture the methane.
to capture the methane, use that as energy to power their Bitcoin miners.
Hmm.
So they are reducing the emissions of
Yep.
that,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
They are in a very, very unique position to capture wasted or stranded energy. So some folks might say, hey, well, that's great that Bitcoin is consuming and mitigating that, but what if we set up something else that's maybe more beneficial? Um, so you can't, though. That's the thing, because Bitcoin is in a unique position where you set up, you can't set up a hospital next to a gas flaring operation. You can't set up a hospital next to a landfill. So these are very, very unique opportunities that Bitcoin is in to be able to capture this wasted or stranded energy.
Mhm.
It's reducing emissions as a result of that. And what's most interesting, in my opinion, as over time we've seen the amount of renewable energy that's powering the Bitcoin network continue to grow. Currently, I want to say it's around 55%, and
Mhm.
that continues to grow over time. And that's also another fascinating piece on why I'm so optimistic about it. But it's fascinating to see that it's essentially the opposite of what the initial critics were saying. Not
Mhm.
only is it beneficial for the environment in general, but it's also advancing renewable energy in a way that was never possible before.
Yeah.
There's fascinating ways where Bitcoin miners are setting up next to solar or wind power, and simply from a mathematical perspective, it shortens the profitability for those power plants and makes, number one, the renewable energy more viable, but it also more sustainable simply because of having Bitcoin mining on that facility.
Right. So you don't have the same transmission costs that would be associated with getting it from the plant or the solar farm to where it needs to be, 3 towns over. Yeah. Or 3 states over.
Right. And similar to the environmental narrative, there's also maybe even greater good that's being done or being provided as a result of Bitcoin from the social perspective.
Right.
So the current global financial system is not inclusive whatsoever. It's often documented that over 1 billion people on our planet simply cannot access the traditional financial system, meaning think of how your life would change if you were not able to have a bank account
If you didn't have a bank account.
or a credit card. You cannot essentially run your business. You can't live on a day-to-day basis. And that's what's being done with most of the folks, I'm sorry, not most, over 1 billion folks in our Earth. So Bitcoin is a lifeline, as we previously touched on, out of necessity for these folks.
Right.
Similarly, folks who are living in some level of oppression, where they're living under authoritarian regimes, and this number gets even larger than the previous one I mentioned. But this is again a huge lifeline for these folks to be able to transact, to be able to potentially store value and live their life without having the government tell them who they can spend their money with, how much they can spend it, and when they can spend it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, Jirayr, I want to thank you so much for giving us just a little insight into all the things that you know about Bitcoin. And it's been very, very educational. And I'm sure my listeners really appreciate this. Thank you so much for your time.
It was a pleasure to be here.
Okay. And thank you all for listening, as always, or watching, whatever it is you're doing. We appreciate it. If you like our podcast, follow us, do all the things. You know what you're supposed to do. And we look forward to connecting with you next time.
Thank you for joining us today for another episode of Absolute Trust Talk Live. If you enjoyed listening in, then don't forget to subscribe. You can find us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you may listen by searching Absolute Trust Talk. While you're there, we would also love for you to leave us a review. And then why not share your favorite episodes with family, friends, or colleagues too? You can find all of our shows and corresponding show notes by visiting absolutetrustcouncil.com. You'll also find a variety of other free resources, including our ebooks, videos, blogs, presentations, and more. If you need help with your estate planning or administration, we also offer a free discovery call to help get the process started. You can find more information on booking your session by visiting absolutetrustcouncil.com/scheduling. Don't forget to keep an eye out for our next live episode. If you join us for the broadcast, you can submit questions during the show. But if not, don't worry. You can always get in touch with us by sending a quick message to info@absolutetrustcouncil.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you soon.